Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is David McMurdo. David is, well, firstly, a chap who I initially met in a pub. We met in a pub in Sydney a few years back. I think we were watching an England game.
We were.
Got got chatting and yeah, connected on that night. And David works. He's always worked in the world of sales. He runs his own sales consultancy business, well-established guy, all things sales, all things leadership, and I'm really excited to catch up with him today. It's been a little while. Find out what he's been up to. Find out some more about his business and also his prior working history, and learn a little bit from him. And see what sort of wisdom he can impart, and talk all things, I guess, sales, business, leadership, and a little bit more about his journey. So, David, with that introduction, mate, welcome to the show. How are you
Thank
getting
you.
on?
So, it's great to be here, Joe. Thanks very much, mate. It has been a while that I think we even saw England win, which nowadays is more usual than not. But it was a good catch up, and I think I've been following your journey on LinkedIn, which has been great, and I love the podcast. So I'm really chuffed to be part of it, mate. So
Yeah, most
fire
welcome.
away.
So, I'd love to start in the present. Your current venture, McMurdo Consulting, your current business. Talk to me about what exactly you're doing in that role, how you're sort of helping your customers.
Yeah, no. Look, I worked up in Singapore for about 4.5 years. Business been through a few sort of transformations in that time. We got bought out by a big American company. And I came back to Australia and I thought, what do I really want to do? What am I passionate about? And I'm very passionate, I think, as you and I have talked about in the past, all things sales. So what McMurdo Consultancy is all about is helping organizations, sales organizations, transform the way they go to market and improve the way that they sell. And we do that from everything from sort of high level strategy, sales strategy facilitation with senior leaders, through developing the very best sales leaders. I'm very passionate about that. I believe sales leaders are the conduit to people's success. And then things like key account management, pitching for large pieces of business, presenting, negotiating, good solid core sales and sales planning, something that not all salespeople are particularly good at. To summarize it, I suppose, and it might sound a little bit cheesy, but quite a few years ago now, I went to school on one of these dad's days at my daughter's primary school, and they asked the kids, what does your dad do? And, dad's there and he's a lawyer, he's an accountant or whatever else. And Mackenzie, my little daughter, stood up and proudly said, and she was 6 at the time, my dad helps other people make money. And that's sort of been my strapline, actually, ever since.
Brilliant.
And that's really what we're all about. I think she'd like a slice of that now, but she can wait for that. But that's very much what we do.
Yeah, gotcha. So what does that actually sort of look like? So say I came to you and said, David, I want to help. I need help with, how my leaders are leading the sales team and also how my salespeople are selling. What would you sort of offer? What does it actually look like you're offering?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it isn't a one size fits all. Okay. I'm very conscious of that. There's a lot of, and I worked for one many years ago back in the UK, a classic, what I would call sales training company, where they've got a series of core modules and they sort of fit what you need around those modules. Because we're a bit more nimble now and a little bit smaller, and probably because I've been doing it longer, we always start with a bit of diagnosis. Where are you today? What's going on in your marketplace? How's that changed? What are your ambitions? What are your aspirations going forward? And then we build any intervention around that. And some of it, yes, is training people. It's amazing how many people haven't been trained in sales, to put it, quite bluntly. And it's quite amazing. And I find that quite astounding in this day and age. And it took a real bit of a hit, as you can imagine, through COVID, because we couldn't do the face-to-face. It had to be on this medium. And whilst we were lucky, we actually doubled in size through COVID because we could touch a lot more people through this medium internationally. I think there's still not a lot of nothing better than trying to be face to face. So we'll align with where people want to get to. Do you want to actually develop a new strategy based on what's happening in your market and the demands of your customers? If so, what does that look and feel like? What's the capability of your sales leaders? Joe, I've seen on your other podcasts, the big challenge is that a lot of sales leaders have become leaders because they've been the best salespeople. And even though it's the oldest cliche in the book that sometimes the best salespeople make the worst sales leaders, a lot of the time it's because they haven't had the development. They don't know what it entails. And I've got great stories of people that actually went back into sales and were incredibly successful because of it. And then once we've developed the leaders to both be the conduit between the strategy and where the business is going to, and really be the conduit to the front line, it's then what are the key frontline tools and skills we need to develop with you, the client, to really execute on what your strategy is. And that's what we do. And that can be, training sessions, it can be coaching sessions, it can be sitting down, consulting with people around what their KPIs should be, what their remuneration structures should be, even what their overarching sales structure should be. And we've worked with clients around that now in Australia for about 5 years and successfully. And it seems to resonate, and we get a lot of repeat business and a lot of referrals. So I can only assume we're doing the right thing.
I like how it's not, you're not sort of going in there and being like, right, this is how you do it. This is how it's always been done. This is how you're very much collaborating and consulting with them and asking their challenges and then giving your sort of opinions and best sort of diagnosis moving forward. What are the sort of main challenges then that these leaders or your clients that they're coming to you saying, David, we need some help with when we're talking sales and leadership? And this is more in the current modern world. What can you sort of enlighten us with there?
Look, there's no doubt that any sales leader, any board that I talk to, and I'm talking to one at the moment, well, quite a few at the moment, but one specifically in New Zealand, their first thing is, how are you going to help us increase our sales, both top and bottom line? How are you going to get our salespeople more effective at not giving margin away? How can you help us get into different market sectors? How can you help us gain a bigger share of wallet? Those are the things that we hear an awful lot, as you can imagine. And those are the challenges that we really try and address. We've had great successes. I remember going into COVID with one national electrical wholesaler and distributor, successful business. And what we did was we basically said, where do you want to get to? What do you think your biggest challenges are? And for them, it was both winning new business, but really connecting at a deeper level with their existing client base and gaining greater share of wallet, whether that be new categories or more of the same product. So we worked with their sales leadership team. We developed a workshop with their sales team. And of course, the real challenge with that was we were just about to come into COVID. So, halfway through the rollout, suddenly here we are and everything's on screen. So we worked with them on that. And, the great thing was that they looked back 18 months later, and in a market where a lot of their competitors were purely interacting via things like email and at best phone, they actually upped the level of activity they did. They booked meetings via Zoom and Teams and other methods. They trebled the amount of interactions they were having with their client base, and they grew their business by 35% through COVID. Brilliant. So, all those challenges can be addressed, but there's the science about it, which is very much the planning, the right tools. There's the skills around it as well. But at a leadership level, there's got to be the commitment to making it happen. It can't be seen as, there's some training off to one side, because that won't address those challenges effectively.
Mm. So, and I know there might not be one answer to this, but they're sort of, those clients of yours that are saying we want to, we should be winning more sales, we should be getting more from our existing stuff. Like, why aren't salespeople maybe thriving as much as they should be? In your opinion, what are some of the obstacles that they're facing?
Look, that's another great question, Joe, because I think, look, I'll tell you a great quote that I got from a sales leader the other day, and I said to him, where do you see your sales team? And I actually saw this in one of the big banks as well. And the sales leader turned around and said, salespeople have lost the habit of selling face to face.
Okay.
When you think about it, for 2.5 years, depending on where you were around Australia, we weren't out there physically in front of a customer. We might have done it through Zoom or Teams, but we certainly weren't doing it face to face. And it's amazing how many people lost that habit, lost the confidence of, looking somebody in the eye, shaking their hand, having a bit of small talk, sitting down, structuring a meeting. It was quite amazing, really. And, that's been one of the things, is about reinstigating those winning habits. The other comment I would say as well is that there's no doubt that COVID shook, the market incredibly. It definitely accelerated people's use of online and digital, because there was no other way to communicate. So, one of the things we're seeing is that people tried to translate face-to-face physical skills into a Zoom environment, and people weren't very good at it. So that was a challenge we saw as well. But the other thing is as well that people get in habits. If we've been selling for a long time, as I have, and I saw your birthday last week. I'm not going to say that I've been doing this longer than your age, but it's not far off. But I mean, the scary thing is people get into a habit, and previously they might have been successful, but suddenly the market changes, the demands change. Maybe people aren't buying as much, and suddenly your whole mindset has to change. We have to be willing to accept that just doing what we've always done isn't going to get us the same output in a market where potentially customers are becoming more demanding. You've probably seen the research out of books like Challenger Selling and great books like that. And Matt Dixon's, a great guy who I know quite well. But, what is it now? 58% of a sales process is done before you even get to meet or talk to a salesperson, because they can do their research beforehand. That was never the case.
Yeah.
So, the way that buyers buy is different now. So therefore, we have to adapt as salespeople. And I think quite a few salespeople haven't adapted or aren't willing to adapt. And I think that's quite a challenge. The only other thing, Joe, I'm going to throw in, sorry, you've got me on a roll now, is that actually this is probably going to throw a grenade into the whole piece, but this working from home, and blended and hybrid learning, I've got no issue with to some degree. The challenge is that, you learn by sitting next to your colleagues, hearing what they're doing, hearing the challenges they face. We don't get that at home. And I know so many of my clients are not struggling with that, getting people back into the office, but what I call the learn to earn ratio. In other words, you join a new business and then you're up and running and being successful. They reckon it's increased by 2 or 3 times the timeline, because quite simply, you're not just sat in an environment listening and hearing and learning if you are in a casual way. Yeah. It's got to be more formal. So lots of different things going on at the moment, and lots of different things and lots of new challenges that we're facing.
Yeah. I think on just that last point, the work from home piece, I couldn't imagine being, a 22-year-old coming out of university, say you wanted to get into sales, and then you join a company and you're sort of working from home, doing video calls, making cold calls from your bedroom. I couldn't imagine how hard that would be, because you just wouldn't be getting the learning that you get Although I know that I got to imagine lots of others did from the office, as you say, learning from the top performer in the office,
Yeah.
shadowing them a little bit, making a ton of mistakes, learning from other mistakes. And I think that's definitely something that's, that the sales world community needs to think about, because that next generation coming through, are they even coming through? I don't know.
Look, there's an expectation of, I can achieve success quicker. I think we hear that across whichever gen it is. I can never remember which one, but Gen Z or millennials or whatever. There's certainly an expectation that we can move through organizations quickly, but you're not going to do that unless you're good at what you do. And there's nothing like, as we used to call it, sitting with Nelly and learning from the great performer next to you, or observing somebody, or getting feedback off your sales leader, whether it be an office environment or going out on joint calls. It's not just going on a training program. It's not just learning online. It's experiential. And I think we've got to be very careful that hybrid learning, and by the way, I work from home, but, I've got no issue with that. But I love getting out. I love interacting with others. And I still do that with a lot of my colleagues, old colleagues, who, interestingly enough, are probably now competitors. But we still learn a lot from each other. And I think that's a key thing we shouldn't forget.
So a couple of things you mentioned there, the learning piece, and the being adaptable.
Yeah.
I kind of think that we're just going to talk about if we talk about, let's say, some top performing salespeople, key attributes, those kind of things. I always think about in sales, being adaptable, being able to change your approach, as you mentioned, and that sort of never finished mindset. You're always learning. They're two of the things I always think top performers and top salespeople have. What would you maybe add to that list? What in your experience? What are sort of the common attributes?
I think both of those are key. I think the mindset piece, there's a lovely, and I'm going to plagiarize a bit here. There's a lovely equation that some colleagues of mine came up with a few years ago. My previous business, we were lucky enough to have a couple of the chief psychs from the Australian Institute of Sport work for us. And we also had Kieran Perkins, the swimmer, work for us for a while as well. And that was fascinating hearing their view on mindset. But I love the equation, which is knowledge plus skills plus process, in brackets, multiplied by mindset equals exceptional performance. And when you think about it, what's the multiplier? It's the mindset. And anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So you can have the great knowledge, the great skills, the great processes. And the challenge is, if you haven't got that mindset, that belief in yourself, that willingness, that drive, that passion to succeed, you're not going to be able to access your knowledge, skills, and processes effectively. The other side of that, of course, is if you haven't got a knowledge, skills, or process, you've just got great mindset. There's nothing worse than a motivated idiot. So you've got to make sure you get that balance right. So, we were lucky. A couple of the guys that we work with did a lot of research into the mindset piece, having great focus, having self-belief, having resilience, picking yourself up. All of those elements I see in great salespeople. The other thing is, as well, Joe, if I can say this, is some people try to overcomplicate sales. Sales is actually quite a simple thing, but it's about doing it simply all the time. I'll give you an example. The one that I still see, and it freaks me out, especially with experienced salespeople, is preparation. And, before you pick up the phone, before you're going to see somebody, preparing for the call. What do I want to get out of it? What's the purpose? Why is it important to the customer? How am I going to go about doing that? Have I got the right questions prepared? Have I got the right collateral? What is the outcome I want? And it doesn't have to be a sale. And, a lot of people don't do that well. Yet, I can't remember the old famous expression, but it was something about poor preparation leads to whatever. And I won't use the words, but we all know it has a big impact. So sometimes just some of that real core stuff, you see great salespeople still utilizing it, because that's the foundation of their success. They don't take shortcuts. So that's a couple of things. Mindset, critical. Have an absolute curiosity with your clients and a curiosity to improve. And don't forget the basics, because that helps as well. That's the foundation. You've probably done it as well. If you're a big sports person, you see, and we got the British Open golf this week. Those guys will spend hours on the practice ground hitting basic balls for each of their clubs before they're thinking about, how am I going to fade this around this tree? Or how am I going to, hook this around this particular bunker because I've got myself in a bad position? They practice about the basics. You get the basics right, you can build from it. And I'm a great believer in that in sales.
That when you mentioned about sales, is actually quite easy. You just have to do it over and over again, or just keep doing it. That's huge for me. I think that's I always bang on about this, just being consistent, just show up again and again. And because I always think maybe I'm not the most talented person, but what I do is I just keep showing up. I just show up every day, and then that's how that sort of that compound interest of you just showing up again and again and again and again and again. That's how you maybe win that client you're looking to break into, and then that's how you edge out that competition. Because a lot of people, they might show up for a week, with a lot of fanfare, but then they're gone, and they don't back it up. I always think that consistency, if someone can get that consistency in their sales, just general process and methodology, then they're on to the winner. Seems like you agree.
Yeah, look, there isn't a shortcut. It, especially in the business that you're in. I'm very similar. There's three things that drive great sales outcomes. You've got to make sure you go and see the right people. So in other words, you've done some good research. You understand the market. You understand the type of business you're going to see. You understand the type of person you're going to see. You then got to put in the effort and the activity. Even if you just focus on the quantity of effort, the more people you see, the more you're likely to get a better outcome. I know that's crude, and I think just measuring people around that alone is wrong. So you've got, who am I going to see? How much am I doing? And then, of course, you've got to work on the quality of what you do when you're in front of people. But if you manage those three parameters, it drives success. But it all starts by, I think, that turning up piece, Joe, is absolutely right. We used to cold call in the good old days when I came into this industry, 100 lifts of the phone a day. It was ruthless. And I remember one guy, and he'd had a shocking day, didn't get one appointment. And his boss was slightly less subtle than he probably could have been. He just turned around and said, "Look, John, you don't pick up the phone, mate. You don't get to talk to anyone. You don't talk to anyone. You don't get any appointment. You don't get to any appointments. Quite simply, you don't sell anything. And if you don't sell anything, you're not going to be here very long." And talk about a motivational statement. But it was back to that. It starts by energy and effort. And of course, we have to be smart. It's not just numbers. But we've got to be resilient. And if you've had a bad day, how do you pick yourself up to keep doing that effort? And those are the three things that we look at. There's no shortcuts, as we know.
Absolutely. You touched upon your background there, your previous working issues, the route I was going to go down next, actually. So how do you sort of reflect on, your, let's say, career, the previous 10 years you've had? What are the, I appreciate not the easiest question to answer, but what are the sort of main lessons that you've learned about yourself, business, sales along the way? And how did you also sort of get into it as well?
It's interesting because I left school at 17 in Britain. I was bored, probably had good old ADHD and didn't realise it. Concentrating, studying, all that at 16, 17, 18 wasn't my bag. So I left school at 17 and joined the British Army as an adult soldier. And I grew up very quickly with some pretty tough characters. But what it did was it taught me to be very self-reliant. It taught me to have huge amounts of discipline that I'd come from an environment where probably I didn't. I had great parents who sort of, you do what you want to do, which was great. So that was great. It taught me a lot about team working and relying on others and listening to people that knew better than you did, which I think when I was that sort of age, it wasn't always the case. So I got into sales purely sort of, I wouldn't say by fluke, but I came out, messed around for a while as you do, had a great couple of summers as a lifeguard in Saint-Tropez, which was not a bad thing when you're 20 odd years old. But I came back and my dad had been in sales, more technical sales, and said, give this a go. So I hunted around and I found a couple of sales jobs that I did for a while. No development, no training. So it was a case of those yellow pages, off you go, which was a bit of a disaster. And I look back now and I could have been positively dangerous because I didn't get that induction that I needed. I then got into a business that I really enjoyed and I started getting success. But then quite simply one day I saw an advert to get into consulting, training, etc. And I thought, that sounds great. I love helping others. And the company I joined was a company at the time, which was the biggest sales training company in the world, or one of the big two, called Mercury International. And I joined them. And the first thing we did was have a 6 months induction on basically how to sell and how to lead sales teams. And it scared me. And it scared me because I realized how I'd been doing so much wrong. But you know what? The greatest lesson I learned there, and I say this to a lot of my clients, was my boss said to me, all I want you to do is work hard. It's down to us as a business and as leaders to make sure you see the right people and you're bloody good when you get in front of them. And that really got me on the journey. So a lot of what I did, because I found I was pretty good at it, was actually selling the services we did. I ended up learning to be a consultant and a facilitator, and that I think actually helped me. And I've been in that for a long time now. And I've just got a passion for it. I love helping people. I always have. I love organizing. I love making, people, become more successful. And I got into it that way, Joe. And to be honest, look, I couldn't, well, it's a bit late now, but I really, for about the last 20 odd years, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. Maybe with a different organization at that time, but I just loved what I do. And that's what got me into it. A few false starts, saw a bit of the light, enjoyed it, realized what it could look like when you've got the basics and the foundation. And as you know, success breeds success. You start getting success, and rather than just sitting there celebrating it, you actually, use that as a springboard to go out and do more. And I think that's what I've done. And, I'm as passionate today about helping people get better at selling and selling myself. Nothing had a win yesterday, nothing like it. You're still, it's great. I love it still. Gives you that buzz. And by the way, I get incredibly pissed off if I lose. Luckily, it doesn't happen too often, but you've got to feel that, because I think if you don't, go and do something else.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. What's made you stick around? Is it still you? Because you still like, I always think if you don't get that, if you lost that buzz, then as you say, go do something else.
Yeah,
is
definitely.
it that you still get that? You still have the fire in the belly? Is it that you say you love helping people? Is that your, let's say, for a better term, your why, as into why you do this?
There's a couple really. I do like helping. I love seeing a sales team. Well, there's two pieces. I love selling what I do. So that's great for me. And I love the thrill of the chase, the thrill of the kill, if you want, which sounds terrible, but I love that bit. And that still gives me a buzz. And it's interesting. My business partner, who has worked with me, Nisa, who's been my assistant for 20 years now, poor girl, would have got less for murder. I think she feels that sometimes. But she says to me, your passion still about it is quite scary. You love doing what you do. I think the other thing is, that's great. But then what I've got to do is I've got, and this is what I love doing what I do, because not only do I make the promise, I've got to deliver on it. So I have to deliver on what I say I think our services can achieve for them. And I get a huge buzz when I see a business growing or individuals growing. Whether it be share of wallet, whether now that a lot of businesses are doing, because some markets are declining, increasing market share, increasing share of wallet, increasing bottom line, increasing their revenue. That gives me a huge buzz. So winning it and doing that are both of my whys. And just seeing people engaged and liking what they do and demystifying sales, because a lot of people still think it's a sort of black art, and it's not. It really isn't. And I'm also a believer that you can actually help and develop people into sales. It's not salespeople are born, not made. Some have a natural preponderance towards doing it, but a lot of people, you can get them up to a level where they're pretty good at it purely by making sure they've got the right attitude and helping and supporting them, but then giving them those core skills and tools to do it. So they're my whys.
Yeah,
they really are.
That the one you just talked about before, when you care about, or you're passionate about actually seeing that business succeed, and you believing that your work, whatever you're doing, whatever you're selling, can help them achieve
absolutely.
That's crucial. I think I call it like that sort of give a shit factor. Like if you don't really believe in what you're selling, if you don't really believe that your product or service, or whatever, can help the business, then you're probably destined to fail. But if you actually genuinely care about the person you're trying to help, it goes a long way, I think.
Yeah, look, I deal with such a different variety of sort of, what I would call blue collar sales, people that sell stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
I do the banking and finance sector, whether that be super funds, whether that be institutional or business banking. And I also do some work in sort of hotels and hospitality as well. Not much, but one very great global client I've got there. And every single one of those individuals, we have some quite interesting debates in workshops about, why are you here? And you hear some people going, I'm here to hit the target. And I sort of get that, because you don't get paid and, your boss is on your back and all of those things. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, if that's the only reason why you're there, look at the tenure of those individuals. They're not there very long, because that's not enough of a reason to get out of bed in the morning necessarily.
Yeah.
And, whether it's a hospitality, business that's helping somebody run a great conference or set up a great wedding or a great function, or, give them the best client experience, whether it's a banking and finance institution, they're helping fund some growth for a major organization, whether it's a super fund for somebody like you and me, Joe, putting us into the right funds so that we can, fund what's going to be a way down the road, that retirement piece, whether it's an electrical wholesaler or a distributor of bathroom products, so that if you and I, renovate our homes, we've got the very best outcomes for that. It's about helping and support people to be successful. And whilst my daughters, my dad helps other people make money, sort of doesn't fly in the face of that. That's the outcome that you get for helping and supporting and helping people grow and helping them nail their key business drivers. All of those things are interlocked. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. It's not just one thing. But I think if you don't have that passion for what it is you're trying to do and help your client in, it's not going to work. If you're not supplying the right person because that's going to help that company grow, then why do it? It's not just body shopping, as it's been called in the industry over the years.
It's sort of it's two-pronged, isn't it? There's that, what we just talked about there, that you've got to care about helping that business grow or do whatever they do, and then you can also, I feel like a lot of salespeople, there's the other side of things where they do just, it's almost, they use it as a tool to better themselves or to hit their target and make commission. There's the other things, the other side of the coin as well, which is which is more of the selfish, where the selfish nature of a salesperson comes in.
Yeah, oh, look, I don't think there's a salesperson probably out there who hasn't got a bit of that inside him. And you've got
exactly.
I've got a mortgage I can't jump over that I want to pay off quickly. So let me say that is going to be an outcome of me helping and supporting people. And I set myself, even as an individual, targets every year, and I'm ruthless against that. And, my assistant, she always laughs, especially after Christmas, and go, "Oh God, you've had 3 weeks to contemplate what we're going to do again. Here we go. You're going to be miserable for a while because it's about how do we hit those numbers." I think you've always got to have that, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact of what contributes to hitting that number, because that number alone sometimes means if you only focus on that, and you know this, Joe, in your business, you want referral, you want references. I mean, I was lucky enough last week. I had 2 or 3 people phone me up, contacting me again via LinkedIn. They hadn't dealt with me for 8 years, and they tracked me down because of what we'd done all those years ago and the value that we'd given them. They haven't tracked me down because I sold them $50,000 worth of development or consulting. They tracked me down because we helped them be successful in whatever it was we did, or we met their experience expectation. We gave them better customer experience, or we drove better staff engagement, or, we helped them, manage their processes more effectively, or be seen in the market as more innovative. Those are the reasons that sit behind our success. And I'm a big believer in that. But you've still got to be a bit selfish as a salesperson, because if you're not, complacency will definitely get in the way.
Yeah, but that contact from 8 years ago, you sounds like you didn't, just cut a deal and run.
No, absolutely not. No, that was one of the second tier banks, and we were very. I got involved almost, about a week after I first came to Australia, and I remember them saying to me that their aim was to double the size of their revenue, which for them is margin, inside 3 years without increasing their cost base by more than 30%. And they did it in just under 3 years. And that business now is 5 times the size of that 13 years later. Brilliant. And we put core processes, tools, mindset, great sales leadership in place that helped drive that. And yes, on the back of it, we made good money. Let's be totally frank. But if we hadn't done that, and I still deal with probably 4 or 5 of those key team members all those years on, and people still track me down because we help them be successful. We help them with their staff engagement. We help them with their delivering customer experience. That's what it's all about. That's really what it's all about.
David, we've talked about the past, your past in particular. We've talked about what you're doing at the moment. Just sort of finally wrapping things up. What does the future look like for yourself? You've done a lot in your career, but it seems like the fire's still burning brightly, burning in the, burning in the belly. What does the future look like?
Oh, desert island daiquiri, all of that stuff would be nice. But and one day, there'll be a chunk of my life is definitely like that. But I love what I do. I was talking to a couple of friends the other day and a couple of ex-colleagues, and they said, "I can't believe you're ever going to retire," and I probably won't. As long as I can enjoy what I do, add value to those I deal with, I'll keep on going. Whether I'll do it at the same level, with the same size projects, who knows? But as long as I've got the passion, as long as I love what I do, I'll just, I keep on going. I love it, and it's not going away, and it still gets me out of bed in the morning. And today's proposal day, and talking to a few more clients, and nice. That's what I love. Without that, that gives me a purpose. Family, social, all those things are a process that's in parallel and a
Yeah.
purpose that's in parallel. But I think you've got to have that. Whatever you're happy and whatever you love, stick with it. I saw, and it's a sad way in some respects towards getting to the end of this, but I saw my father retire early because he was forced to, and he lost the will. He lost that purpose and his passion, and actually didn't last that long after it either, because so much of his life had been tied to that. I'll never get to that phase, but I think, do what you love doing. If you don't, do something else.
Yeah.
And I'm a great believer in that.
I always think there's a sort of strange concept that if you're just waiting to retire, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, and then you're kind of like, I'll retire, then I'll do what makes me happy. It's like, well, I'd rather just do what I enjoy,
and
do
then
what I'm passionate about, and then and then, as you say, like, kind of never retire really. If you kind of, because you're not really retiring, if that makes sense. Like,
look, the other thing, Joe, is as well, let's be honest, I think you've still got to be stimulated in your mind.
Right.
I've got a couple of mates of mine back in the UK. They retired early, early 50s, very successful. Every single one of them has started another business because they wanted that. All salespeople, by the way, or ran their own business, but a sales back. They love the thrill of the chase still. They love that involvement with other people. Great sailors. One of them sails across the Atlantic every year, very nice on his 80-foot yacht or whatever he's got. He's done very well. But guess what? He's still competitive in his social life, but now he started off another business because he wants that. He needs that passion and that drive still. So, look, we should never motivate others by what motivates us. Everyone is different. My motivation is to keep going because I enjoy it. That's not to say that others haven't got something more motivational outside of work. And lucky people when they do. And hey, it's life. And as long as you enjoy it, as long as you're around to enjoy it, that's the key thing.
Leads me very nicely on to my final question, which is around the idea of success. You've touched upon the things that give you the purpose, which is obviously pretty closely tied, I imagine. What does success mean to you in any which way, personal, professional?
Oh, look, personal success it might sound really bland and a bit blasé, but it's just to be happy. I've got my kids. I've got my eldest who's in the UK. I've got my two kids here, and they're all doing, touch wood, they're all doing pretty well, which is great. And that's a big buzz. I don't think we should ever underestimate personal happiness or ever take it for granted. And I certainly don't. I've been incredibly lucky through my life to have brilliant friends, brilliant colleagues, and enjoy what I do, which links into the business one. As long as I keep getting a buzz out of what I do, as long as I can help my clients be successful, for me, that's success for me. And that's what I love. So on a personal thing, be happy, see what the kids are doing, occasionally, even with my dodgy golf handicap, have a good round. The other side is very much enjoy what you do at work. Yeah. But again, still have that purpose for me for helping people succeed. And let's be honest, still smashing out those numbers because I love doing that as well.
Love it, David. Thank you very much for running through that. I'm going to definitely be listening back to that conversation. I'm going to be burning up a few notes myself. Great to talk all things sales, great to talk things leadership, business, loads of great insights there. Appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing your journey and your wisdom. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been great to catch up. And I'll, if you want to check David's business out, I'll leave the floor to you.
Yeah. So, David McMurdo, I'm on LinkedIn, and that's where Joe and I still connect quite a bit. And then the other thing is our website, which is quite simple. It's www.mcmurdoconsultants.com. And there's some background there as well. And feel free to reach out if you just want to chat. that's where all these great things start from. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. And thanks, Joe, for inviting me on.
Been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye now.